The information and views expressed by our host or guests on the Unlock Potential podcast are their own, and not a substitute for professional medical or fitness advice. Always consult with qualified healthcare or fitness professionals before starting any new exercise program or making changes to your current routine.
There are times where our body needs more ease. There are times where our body needs more intensity. There are times where our body needs more weights going up overhead, and there are times where our body needs more weights below our waist. We should be following a program that's specific to that.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Unlock Potential. I'm Brian Delaney. Our focus this season is fitness. I'll be joined by Dr. Duvall, who's going to guide us through his protocol for getting into your best shape so we can live our best lives and serve others well.
Hi, and welcome back to Season 2 of Unlock Potential. This is Episode 9, where we're going to discuss functional exercise and how to balance both safety and performance. In our last episode, we discussed how the body can create layers of imbalance in the musculature or layers of tissue damage that has not been healed yet. And that creates imbalances and changes in how an individual will move. Now, oftentimes in exercise physiology, the concept is that how somebody looks to a coach when they're moving is what will keep them safe. If they keep their knees in an appropriate line with their toes, if they keep their back in a particularly flat position, if their shoulders are positioned a certain way or their head or neck is positioned certainly, they can keep themselves safe. Unfortunately, what that doesn't do is that does not look inside the body at all of those layers of imbalances. It doesn't look inside the body at the symptoms that particular person is experiencing. Now, as a chiropractor and as a coach who is teaching people appropriate technique from that mindset, I saw so many people who looked to me from the outside like they had great position, but they were uncomfortable while they were doing the movement. And then I asked them how to do it more comfortably. And to me on the outside, they looked like they were experiencing a much more dangerous position. But allowing them to check in on themselves over time, they were able to make progress even though it looked wrong from the outside. And so from that, I started really investigating what is a functional exercise and how do I help guide that person through that safety and performance in the long run. And that's what we're going to talk about today is how do I layer that process so I can reach my fullest potential so I'm maximally helpful to others. A functional exercise has a few main components. You will either move the body, similar to gymnastics or yoga or calisthenics. Your body is going to move through a particular range of motion. You are going to move an object around your body where both the object and you are free to change as the weights change, as your fatigue levels change, and as your symptoms change. You will hold an object and then move your body. So that object will stay in a particular place, but allow you to move your body through a particular range of motion, which can adjust as fatigue changes, as the weight changes, and as your symptoms change. It's going to maximize the ease, the weight, the repetitions, and the speed for that particular range of motion. And so the freedom of it is not going to pigeonhole you into one particular way of doing it, but allow you to adjust so that all of those factors can be maximized. The fittest human being and the most capable to others are going to move heavy weights for lots of repetitions really fast with ease. And the only way to get there is to make sure each moment is allowing us to do that. So let's talk about some ways that this is not achieved to really highlight the way it is achieved And then in each of our exercise videos, we're going to show you some different ways of accomplishing that particular exercise with maximizing ease, weight, reps, and speed. When we are moving an object, it's one object so that we can focus our body around the gravity of that weight. We are not focused on two separate objects. Now, because this is exercise, it's planned, prepared, measured, compared, and competed. And so as we start adding a second object or a third object, there's too many variables for us to really measure it, compare it, and make progress in the long run. So a single object is what we're going to do. If I'm going to move an object from the height of my shoulder up overhead, I'll either use a barbell, which is one object where I can use both hands, or maybe a dumbbell or a kettlebell, which is one object where I use one hand. What I'm not going to do is put two different objects in both hands because the level of variability is too high for us to measure that progress in the long run. We're also not going to hold two different positions. So this is an extension of two objects. So a lot of times a very healthy exercise for people is to carry a weight on one side at the height of their hip as they move around, or maybe carry one object overhead as they move their way around. Now that got popular quite a bit a few years ago in social media. And then people started saying, hey, how do I make this more interesting? They started holding one weight by the hip and another weight overhead. Now, the limitation there is because we're focused on two, we're not maximizing either one of those. The counterbalance of weights on opposite sides, the fact that we have to focus on two different places means we can't maximize it. If you were to carry a weight just by your hip on one side, you could do heavier than if you also have to focus a weight overhead. And vice versa. If you're carrying a weight overhead, you can go heavier if you don't also have to focus on another weight by your hip. So for our functional exercise here, we would focus just on the overhead for a while, and then just on the one by the hip for a while, not two at the same time. We're not using machines for this. Machines limit our freedom. They hold us in place while we use a particular part of the machine, but it doesn't allow us to maximize any particular range of motion. We can't start utilizing other parts of our body in order to help move that weight through a range of motion. The machine isolates you and holds you in place. So that is not a functional exercise. Rubber bands, by the same token, are not a functional exercise. They are holding the band in place while you're moving around the band. And that, again, doesn't allow you to maximize any particular range of motion because you can't move side to side or front to back. You've got to hold yourself in one particular place in order to get that rubber band to function appropriately. Hip thrusts and Nordic curls are two popular exercises that are also not functional exercises. They do not allow you to move freely enough to maximize the ease, weight, reps, or speed for that particular range of motion. For those who are familiar with a hip thrust, your upper back is on a platform and your feet are on the ground and you have the weight at the height of your hip, essentially moving through this range of motion with the weight at the height of the hip. Well, if I did that in a squatted position, I could move a lot more weight, speed, and repetitions and ease than I can forcing myself into this awkward imbalance situation. As well, it doesn't allow me to adjust to have my upper body help a little bit or my torso move a little differently to assist the process. And so hip thrusts are not a functional exercise. Nordic curls are where you're holding your ankles in place and lowering yourself forward and back up while bending on the knees. Well, again, that is not allowing enough freedom for you to maximize the ease, weight, reps, and speed for that particular range of motion. And so what we would do if in that Nordic curl is it's locking your ankles in place and asking your feet and ankles to hold themselves steady while you're hinging just around one particular joint. And that does not allow us to maximize what we're looking for. And so those last 3 or 4, the machines, the rubber bands, hip thrusts, and Nordic curls, the reason people often give to do those is that it's for a body part. It's focused on the anatomy. They're looking to specifically fire one particular muscle or one particular group of muscles in that exercise. Well, as we saw in last week's episode, there can be many layers of imbalances that occur that our body needs to be able to adjust and unwind steadily as opposed to forcing that one particular muscle group to work. Because if we go to the point where we're focusing on body parts, we've got to go all the way down that rabbit hole, meaning all of a sudden we're ignoring our symptoms, having to do each particular muscle, all 680 some, with its own specific exercise. And as we start to separate all of that out, our brain does not know how to coordinate all of that musculature. And so we start moving like this canned robot, trying to focus on each particular muscle instead of teaching our body to move in an athletic, fully coordinated way. So we're going to move our body, we're going to move an object around our body, or we're going to hold an object while we move the body, and we're going to maximize ease, weight, reps, and speed for that particular range of motion. Now notice that that allows us to start to deviate how we're doing that activity. We saw the other day that a gentleman who might be kicking on one leg in soccer when he is younger has layers of imbalances between his 2 legs. And so the way he carries and the way he squats down and the way he runs might be a little bit imbalanced. But as he works his way up towards peak potential of all functional exercises, his body will achieve that balanced structure. So instead of playing only soccer from the time he is young until he ages and ceases to exist, he's going to play soccer when he's young, create a little imbalance, but then start to engage in exercise that requires his body to unlayer and balance itself out over time. And the way we get there is through safety and performance. We're not going to isolate and say, hey, because your left leg has less muscle mass, only use your left leg for a while until it catches up to the right. We're not going to say, hey, because you had this injury, we're going to hyper focus on this painful area until the pain goes away. Then you'll be good to go and be fully balanced. That's not how the body works. It's still going to function on a regular basis. So we're going to function in a way that keeps us safe while we look to maximize our performance. And we have 5 priorities that we work through to keep people safe, as opposed to what it looks like to somebody from the outside. Priority 1 is separated into 1A and 1B because both are right in the moment, teaching us how to be both maximally performing and safe. Move steadily and touch softly with gravity. What that means is as you're moving down, as your body is moving down, or as the object you're moving around your body is down, or as you're moving your body down while holding an object, you should move steadily and touch softly. Then you're going to move quickly and explosively against gravity. So as you fire on the way up, you're going as quickly as you can because you've set a goal to move through a particular range of motion, and the intent to go as quickly as you can sends a signal from your brain like a shotgun out to as many muscles as you can. And it says, hey, we need help here. Hey, we need help here. Hey, we need help here. And so if you've ever heard somebody say, we've got to activate muscles. This is how your body activates muscles, moving quickly and explosively against gravity. Now that works like a spread out shotgun. The coordination is off. Sometimes you'll fire one muscle first and another muscle second, or vice versa. And the body keeps itself safe. It keeps its joints in good alignment when the coordination is perfect, when the firing of muscles is rhythmic and fluid. Well, it learns that rhythm and fluid by moving steadily and touching softly with gravity. And so in a lot of exercise rehab programs, they focus on what's known as what's called eccentric exercise, the lowering down portion. In each moment, you learn coordination by controlling steadily on the way down and touching softly with gravity, and you maximize performance by firing up as quickly as you can. And so there's muscle activation, muscle coordination, muscle activation, muscle coordination, over and over and over. Now that might mean that sometimes you move this way and sometimes you move that way because your brain is constantly figuring out what's tired, what's fresh, what's ready to go, and what needs a little bit of a break. But if we focus on that coordination and that explosion, then we're going to be both safe and maximize our performance in each repetition. Now, as we're going, we want to express a complete range of motion. And so as I'm moving a weight from my shoulder up overhead, I want to maximize that range of motion at the top. And I want to make sure I come all the way to the shoulder at the bottom. What I don't want to do is start to add repetitions, add weight, add speed, or try to make it easier by shortening the range of motion. And so as I move that weight up overhead, I might be able to go quicker by stopping short of the shoulder and moving just a little bit up overhead. I might be able to maximize the repetitions by shortening that range of motion. But that shorter range of motion over time leads to weakness at the ends of the range of motion. It leads to fatigue that builds quickly at the ends of the range of motion. And so while our gym performance might be a little bit better, our outside the gym performance suffers. And so our goal is not measured by our number of repetitions in the gym or our speed in the gym or our weights and ease in the gym. It's measured outside the gym. And so we maximize the range of motion inside the gym so that we can carry that outside. We want to express an appropriate effort in order to shift ourselves to progress long term. And so priority 1 and priority 2 are very much the focus immediately, rep after rep after rep. And now we start to shift into what does our long-term performance look like for 3, 4, and 5. Expressing the appropriate effort has to do with what we've talked about in the difference between the comfort zone for flexibility and stamina and the effort zone for strength work. If we go too intensely on our stamina work or not intense enough on our strength work, we're not expressing the appropriate effort, which means long-term, we're at a higher risk, we are less safe, and our performance suffers. Too much intensity on stamina work means that we have a lot more breakdown. The dosage of tissue damage is way too high for stamina work. If we don't go intensely enough on our strength work, our performance suffers because we only become stronger outside the gym by maximizing that moment inside the gym. And so if we go into strength work and we hold back, or we do it when we're already tired or already stiff or already sore, we're not going to have that performance outside the gym. 4 is an extension of 3 in that we should follow a program specific to our needs. There are times where our body needs more ease. There are times where our body needs more intensity. There are times where our body needs more weights going up overhead, and there are times where our body needs more weights below our waist. We should be following a program that's specific to that. And in the Stay Active method, we do the limber test to get a lot of signals for how our body is feeling. Those signals indicate a style of exercise that we need, and then we execute that style of exercise based on algorithms and our performance in the past. So if we're ignoring how we're feeling from that limber test, if we are ignoring what we need to do and instead choosing what we want to do, if we are not tracking our progress so that we're dosing ourselves appropriately, we are at greater and greater risk of injury and illness in the long run. So we should express the appropriate effort and make sure that we're choosing a workout and an exercise plan that's specific to our needs. And only after we've achieved all of those should we then start to think about the technique that it looks like to somebody else. And that technique should be both effective at achieving all of these and efficient, meaning it's bringing ease to all of those as well. And so to keep yourself safe while working through muscle imbalances, while working through stronger areas and weaker areas, while working to heal old layers of damage that are stuck in deep and digging our way out through those in order to make progress, what it looks like is going to change, and we should choose a technique that supports all of these processes. So if somebody says, hey, you should do that in a way that looks like this instead, hey, you should lift that off the ground with a flat spine as opposed to a rounded spine, but that flat spine hurts, or you can't do the full range of motion by holding a neutral flat spine, or if somebody says, hey, you should have your knees go in line with your toes when you're squatting, but keeping your knees in line with your toes means that you don't express a complete range of motion, or you can't stand up as quickly when you stand up, then they're getting out of order for your safety and performance. If you focus in and say, hey, putting the knees out this way allows you to actually move quicker, then that's a beautiful goal. But if putting your knees in that direction means that you have to move slower, that's not the right goal. If moving in a particular way shortens your range of motion, that's not what we're looking for. But if that cue, hey, move this way, gets you a bigger range of motion, then that's some really beautiful advice. So we've got layers of injury, layers of illness, layers of tissue damage from the past that we're going to work through. We're going to use the limber test to become aware of what we're feeling. We're going to use those feelings to guide our exercise plan. And that exercise plan is going to be functional exercise. And that functional exercise can maximize both safety and performance by following these guidelines. I'm glad you listened into this today. Please follow us on Patreon to get some more deep content as we start to express how we move this and track our progress in the long run.
Check out the official Unlock Potential store, where inspiration meets style. Explore our exclusive collection of gear inspired by the transformational messages straight from our Unlock Potential podcast. From trendy apparel that embraces the power of positivity to accessories that fuel your motivation, we've got something for every go-getter. Spread the messages of empowerment, energy, and motivation that you get from the Unlock Potential podcast by grabbing your gear today. What makes exercises like the bench press fall outside of this very helpful and useful definition of functional exercise?
Great question, Brian. So in a bench press, we are laying flat on a bench, And the best way to perform it is to actually pin the shoulder blades on the bench so that the shoulder blades do not move. And then we move the bar towards and away from our chest.
Okay.
Well, first of all, we are moving an object around the body, but we have no freedom there because we're pinning part of our body against an object.
Okay.
And so we start to isolate body parts when we pin ourselves or pin the object.
Okay.
Now, to break that down even more specifically, the reason a bench press is not functional is because in all other instances of life, as I move the arm forward, quite often the shoulder blade comes with it. And as I move the arm back, the shoulder blade goes with it. Now, in a bench press, because I'm pinning it against the bench, as the arm goes forward, the shoulder blade does not. And should I accidentally do it incorrectly, which means as I push the bench away, my shoulder blade comes forward. As I come back down, it gets pinned against the bench and I'm not able to slide it back under appropriately. And so it alters the way our body moves naturally, and it doesn't allow us as much freedom in order to move that object around ourselves.
So some people might say, well, functionally, I may find myself in this position, and I may find myself in a position where I'm on my back and I've got to move an object, right? And so that's a very functional, that's a very life situation, right? So why doesn't that keep up? Why doesn't that hold water with you?
That's a great question. If I were pinned on the ground with an object on top of me, I would not, with all of my strength, push it off of me and just hold it there.
Yep.
What I would do is I would push it off of me this way. I would push it off of me that way. Or I would push myself under the object or push myself on top of the object.
Makes sense.
And so what I'm not going to do is specifically push it away because I'm still stuck under it. I'm going to work to get it off of me or me off of it. And the bench press doesn't qualify for any of those.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Unlock Potential. For exclusive content, make sure to subscribe to our Patreon. Follow us across all socials at @TheBrianDelaney and visit our website at thebriandelaney.com to shop our gear and see what's coming up next.